Hey guys, today we're going to go over maintenance for your car lift. So a car lift, whether it is a 4-post hoist or a 2-post, is a crucial tool, but a lot like air compressors, it tends to get neglected. So today we're going to go over some basic maintenance. Now, on top of having a Babco technician come over and look at our hoist, we've also installed an air pressure regulator and oiler. So the regulator is crucial because there is a max PSI for running your airlock system and also your rolling jacks. And we also run the oiling system. That way we're always adding oil mainly to our air jacks because there is no way to really administer it easily. I have the air system on here, and the only other way for me to put oil in is I was disconnecting it off of the airline, dropping a bunch of oil in and pushing it through. So having this on there makes it more automated. On top of inspecting the water trap near our 4-post lift from Benpack, we also make sure that we drain the actual tank on a regular basis to make sure that there's no water going through our air lines. All right, guys, so we got Scott here from Babco, and he is here to do our maintenance on our hoist today. So can you just tell us, when you walk into the shop, what do you look for? What are you going to check for when you're looking at our hoist?
First thing's a visual inspection. I walk over the hoist and I look for, anything that's maybe damaged, broken, unlevel. I check the concrete right off the bat. Yeah, more of a visual inspection.
And what are your concerns at the cables? If you're doing a visual inspection, like what are you looking for when we look at these?
The cables, the easiest for the cables is to, if it's frayed, you're going to gently just rub your hands the length of this cable.
So you're kind of looking for like a burr or something that's going to poke your finger.
Visual, and I'm also feeling, so if it's a small, tiny fray, I'm going to feel it. And again, you run your fingers gently over it.
Mm-hmm. So let's say you do find a small fray. What is the course of action to take? Just monitor it for a bit?
If it's one fray, I'm not too worried. If it's going to be anywhere from 10, anything more, usually the good rule of thumb now is 2 frays would be okay. If you get, with the cable's going, you're going to get, in a 1-foot section, you're going to get 5 to 10 frays. Time to replace the cable.
Okay.
And the cable could be dry, could be damaged from jumping the pulley, could be several things, but once you get more than 2 frays, time to, especially in a 1-foot section.
And it is a Benpack hoist, so Babco, I can call you guys and you can come and replace the cable for me?
You can inspect it, replace it, yes.
Okay, perfect. So you're saying the pulleys have changed over time?
A little bigger, yeah. So it spreads more of the weight over the pulley.
Oh, okay.
And that they go through a lot of pins. So the bigger pulleys help.
So I can get more. So in theory, I would get more life out of it just by them changing the size of it.
Exactly. If they went to a smaller pulley, you would drastically see.
So if the pulley's bigger, does that mean also I have more contact patch on the cable, so the cable lasts longer too?
Exactly. And you got to think about this big cable too. Trying to bend around a small point or a big point. It's
right.
Easier over a bigger point. And also, what they've also changed on the water hoist is the stacker. They've gone for the double stack.
What was it before?
They'd be on 1 pin and there'd be 4.
Oh, okay.
So then you get a little more tension on it, right? So that pulley only has 1 cable on it. This one has 2. So these pulleys technically should wear out a little faster than the rear ones.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's like a sailing boat.
But the way they design it, is to reduce wear, though. That's why we have this current setup right now.
Current setup, so it's a lot better.
So then we have more grease fittings under here, same thing. And you're saying you have to be careful about over greasing these particular ones, right?
Yeah, because if you grease too much, it gets in the pulley, and it gets on the cable. And I don't like the grease on the cables, because then it collects all the dirt, holds the moisture in. Let it come out. I just saw a little grease come out, so I stopped. Just a tiny little grease come out of the pulley, and I stop.
Scott right now is on top, and he's inspecting the ladder right now. So can you explain to us what you were looking for as far as the adjustment goes for the ladder and tightness of that nut on the ladder?
So it's a nylon nut, so I don't have to worry about that. But if it's a non-nylon nut, it's double locked. Double lock nutted by a nut on the top and nut on the bottom. So I'm making sure that those are tight. If it's not, well, the whole weight of the vehicle sits on this ladder. and you can see that there's a gap on the bottom. There has to be a gap. So when we come down for the bend, see that gap?
Yeah.
So that if that's loose, all that weight will come crashing down to there. This ladder will bend out and damage a lot.
And basically, it's not holding the weight of the vehicle properly.
Yes.
So if it bows and bends, maybe the locks don't lock properly. Who knows what's going to happen in that scenario?
Yeah. You have to have that gap in the bottom. If you don't have the gap in the bottom, the ladder could bend.
I see.
So that's an important thing to check. Especially on the older hoists. The new ones all usually come with a nylon nut.
Oh, so the older ones didn't do that.
Yeah, I just had a straight nut on either side. This one has one. It has one on either side as a safety, right?
Is a compromise if it doesn't have it? Can the technician or the owner use thread lock to put it in place? Or
I would double nut it. I put a nut on the bottom.
2 nuts is better.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
way better.
Okay.
Way better, way safer.
So Scott's is explaining the secondary lock to me. So can we go over how that mechanism actually works?
Okay. So secondary lock. I got nothing to weight on this cable. It's loose. Yeah, that lock's gonna disengage if there's if that cable's not pushing it back. It's a secondary lock, so if the cable ever breaks, boom, that lock comes out. You're safe. So it's
So
also
when we're pulling up, there's weight on the cable. It's pushing the lock away.
Yes.
In a scenario where the cable breaks or comes off for whatever reason, that lock immediately engages. That's how it works. So
Yes.
that's what you're checking during our once over this year.
Yeah.
Is you're checking for operation, you're lubricating, make sure it actually is working,
Yeah, because if this roller stops rolling,
right?
they get seized up. It'll still work, but you'll get a flat spot on there.
That's
And
probably a big deal for outdoor hoists.
Yes, it'll eventually, I've seen them wear right through that roller. It'll wear right through that pin and break, and then the cable will get.
Is that due to lack of lubrication?
Lack of lubrication.
Okay.
That gets all seized up. See how easy that spins right now?
Right.
So that's kind of one thing I check for when it's down.
So if it's seized, that has to be addressed immediately.
Yeah, get it flowing, take it out, clean it.
Because if that's not rolling, I'm also wearing out the cable and that pulley at the same time.
The cable acts like almost like a chain. You actually don't damage the cable.
Okay.
Actually, because it's all grooved,
Okay.
it actually acts like a saw.
Oh,
And
okay.
it saws through there.
Oh, so that takes all the abuse, not
This
the cable.
takes all the abuse because all those little bumps
Mm-hmm.
actually will chisel away at it, and you actually won't wreck the cable.
That's really good to know.
The
'cause,
cable
like,
lead through.
I read about it, like the inertia secondary lock. I had no idea how it actually worked, and it's actually so simple. But
Simple.
you got to maintain it.
You got to maintain it, and also you got to think about if you're pressing the lock release button for the primary lock, and you're coming down and you have your hand on there, and a cable breaks.
Right.
The hoist is going to come down. If that secondary lock, the hoist is going to come down. Probably hit the ground before your reflexes take that butt off that button.
Right.
So that's the most important time for that lock to really be working. Otherwise, you got 2 locks of primary. If you're holding that button, that's the most dangerous time. When you're coming down, that's when a lot of accidents happen on hoists. Is when you're
Also,
actually
coming down that's when it's going to happen.
or going up, but coming down mostly because on the 2 post 2, you're releasing that lock, and then something happens, comes down, but you don't have a secondary lock on a 2 post. By the time you release that, the car's already on the ground.
So that's on a 2 post. The operator actually has to be very aware of what's happening, and to give yourself a chance, you got to let go of that.
You gotta let go of that. And if you hear any creaking or something, stop. Stop and hear anything unusual noises, kind of stop. But yeah, that's a lot of the accidents will happen coming up or down.
With unusual noises that people are maybe not listening to or just neglecting.
Yeah, that's why the 4 posts are a little more safer. They got 2 locks.
Right.
See just a tiny bit of grease come on from the inside.
Yeah. Like
So
on the other
see
side, I see a little bit coming out here. Yeah.
A little bit coming out, I stop. We don't want to over grease it.
So you're saying like there's a little bit of a jumping sensation we can get, and this will eliminate it. What's actually happening? What's causing it to hop a bit?
It's just dry. I'm not making great contact in there, so it's just gonna rub, and you're gonna get the vibration.
So every single pulley that the cable rides on will have a grease fitting on the hoist.
Some of the newer ones don't. They have like an oil-like bushing.
Okay.
But this year, like the Bandpack has switched. So they've got like an oil-like bushing, so it actually, every time you use it, it's impregnated with oil. You put it in a vise and the oil will come squishing out with it.
Okay. So that's like a
Every time you
lifetime.
use it, it actually, a little oil comes out.
Okay. Is that because people were neglecting these things? They had to switch the product over?
It's a little better because if guys, they aren't doing this.
So will I see that on every, like from a 6,000 pound hoist all the way up to like one like this 14,000, or does it depend on the year of manufacturing?
Depends on your manufacturing.
Okay, so all the newer stuff we're going to be seeing, it's going to have that oiling system built into it already.
Yes.
Okay.
I imagine they're going to try it out and see if it works, and if it doesn't work, they'll go back to this.
But this is tried and true. Like you've seen a lot of these. Like as long as you're greasing them manually, minimum, these are tried and true.
I'll walk into a shop and I'll hear a certain noise, and I'll see the hoist vibrating. It's usually I'll go under the runway because you have the 4 stacker. So the 4 stacker, you got 4 pulleys all turning different directions.
Okay.
On that pin.
Right.
And if they're not lubricated properly, you're going to get vibration. It's going to jump, 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 and make a noise. I'll just lubricate it.
Usually goes away.
Down a couple times, goes away. Some of the customers, we come in once a month, especially a high volume shop. I do this, goes way smoother than your hoist.
Right.
Once a month, just a little this, lubing, guides, it just comes up and down like a dream.
And like so, like any equipment, it is better if you're using it all the time. So like if someone, let's say, is like me, a hobbyist that stores it a lot of the time, is it just a good idea just to run it like once in a while, just because?
Just like what if you're storing your car, sometimes the guys come in and they'll just run it once a month just cause, right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Okay. Good to know.
Exact same thing.
So if we were to do a fluid change, what else would we do?
To do a fluid change, I would take your hydraulic line off. I'll hoist all the way on the bottom, hook up another hydraulic line to that, run it into my waste barrel, run it till it starts cavitating. Stop, take these 4 bolts off, drop the tank, clean everything, check the magnetic, there'll be a piece of magnet on the suction tube.
Okay.
I'll check that for metal filings.
Okay, so there actually is a filtration. There is magnetic filtration in
There's
these.
a filtration, and there's actually a filter on the bottom of that. So I check to see how dirty, especially if it's fairly new. I'll check for metal filings. If there's metal filings, try to find out why. Clean that all up, put the tank back on. Always fill any hoist on the bottom.
Okay.
Then I'll fill it. Should have a dipstick in it. My hands are too greasy.
And how often should the owner be having the fluid changed out?
It's all different. I think the earliest is 3 years.
3 years.
Most
Okay.
average is 5 years.
Okay.
Some are 7 years.
And that's in a volume shop, like not a hobby. That's not hobbyist we're talking about. We're talking about an actual shop that's running cars.
That's in a volume.
Okay.
And if you had this outside, I may say do it every 3 years.
Okay.
Because you're grabbing all that dust from the outside, all that moisture. It's getting sucked through there, in and out.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the fluid today was pretty clean, so we don't have to change that out
No,
today.
it's brand new.
Okay.
Looks perfect. You have your high and low points on it, and you're right on the top.
And that's all I have to do to check the fluid level.
Yep. It's right like that. I'll wipe it off again. You'll see the minimum, the maximum. Screw it in. Out, and you can see it's right at the maximum, so that's perfect.
And it just has, because we put transmission fluid, just as long as it looks cherry red, we're happy.
Yeah, exactly.
So now we're looking at the top side of our lift. So you're going to check the rolling jacks now?
Yeah. Get to check the travel, run it up and down. Make sure the gaps stay the same. Though your runways are bolted, make sure the gaps stay the same on this guy. She's all rolling nice and free. I would hit the wheels, I'd lubricate them all. This is running really smooth. Lubricate all the wheels. Make sure, check for debris, damage. Yeah, all the wheels are fine, everything's tight. All these are lock nutted in.
So my question, the wheels and these other pieces of metal that aren't painted, is there a plating or a coating on them? Or will
They're galvanized, so they shouldn't rust.
Okay.
They're galvanized, so that's all they're protected, right? Yeah, all that stuff is galvanized, whatever's not painted. Yeah, so what I'm also checking for is right here. Your this will stop the vehicle from, it's not the vehicle, the rolling jack jump in the track. So this is a safety device, right?
So you're checking for what? Gap?
Right. If this isn't installed, potentially the rolling jack could fall out.
I see.
So that's just keeping it in there, so that's very important.
So when you check that, are you just lifting, you're just lifting up and making sure it catches? Is that all you're checking?
Well, it's more visual, as long as it's tight in there and
straight.
installed and there's no gaps, good. I was just lifting to show you
Right.
that, what it does, right?
Right.
It's not gonna let that wheel go taller to pull out.
Because this could, I guess, get damaged while people are using it, or it can get
Yes.
loose.
Come loose, you know, we got rolling jacks and stuff under, so your rolling could get damaged and all. You gotta make sure that those are on, those are big safety, you know. I fail the rolling jack safety inspection if they don't have these.
If they're installed. So some places don't actually put them on, or they take them
They
off.
fall off. They take them off.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, because like is it a nylock?
Nylon.
It is, okay. So, but it is like it's up to the owner. You got to check this as the owner.
You gotta check
Or
this, yeah.
if I'm not calling you, even if I call you every year, a lot can happen in 1 year.
Exactly. No, you got to check those because what happens is, you know, certain conditions up in that if this, it's usually more if the runways somewhere free floating. If it's free floating and it gets on an angle, this will run off the track.
Right.
And let's say you're under there, this comes down.
Right.
That's gonna do some damage.
Yeah. Because like, yeah, like even pushing these on the rollers, like these weigh a lot. They are like, well, this is 7,000 pound capacity on these particular ones, so it has to be able to handle a lot of weight.
It's gonna be 500-600 pounds.
Yeah. So it's extremely dangerous if not installed correctly.
Okay, and then you just warm them up. Listening that the pump isn't overworking. Checking all the hydraulic lines as they're pumping, they would be leaking. They're not flexing too much. Making sure the locks are engaging as they go up, they're engaging.
I do want to mention, I believe my air compressor is off, so we might be losing pressure if people notice like, oh,
It should be a little faster.
yeah. So people might notice like, oh, the jack's a little bit slow. That's because we have the compressor off right now, just so it's a little quiet. Yeah.
Full height, checked that these are working properly. It's got a double lock on there, which is nice. Most just have one. It's got the double lock feature.
So you mean two of these?
Yes.
Oh, so not every manufacturer does that?
No, they'll have a lot of manufacturers just have one.
Oh, okay.
You got two, so if one fails, boom, you got two.
I like that because that is a cast piece. That's not a forged piece, so you never know, right?
You never know. I rested it on the locks. Make sure she's going on the locks. There we go. Check to make sure it goes on the locks, and then while I got it up, I check this bolt is tight. So all that's holding this is going up is this bolt through that. If that's loose, that bolt can get twisted and snap, and this whole thing can come down. So that's a very important piece, this bolt right there. It's gotta be tight.
So that's that is just as important as the locks.
Yes.
Because all the weight's coming up, all the weight's on that.
Yeah, if that's loose, that's just gonna overwork that bolt, and it could break. Then I'm checking to make sure that there's the pin that goes through here that holds that cylinder in.
Okay.
Checking to make sure that it's not working itself out. It's held together by a little Allen screw right there. The pin's fine. Usually what I do is I'll lubricate all these pivot points with spray can.
I see.
I check the guides to make sure the guides aren't damaged on this guy.
Are those easily replaceable over time if they get chipped? Like let's say there's like a bolt lands in there and you're using it, then you lower it and you crush it with a bolt. Is that replaceable?
Yes, replaceable.
Okay.
You got to take this. You got to take this out and lift that whole jack up. It is replaceable.
So there is some disassembly.
Very few times we have to replace that.
Okay. At least we know it can be done though.
Yes.
Okay.
Check all the roll points. Check all the pivot points. Again, if this rolling jack is ever going down slow, you want to grease this. There's a grease nipple right there.
Right.
Grease this pivot pin because that's like all the weights. Most of the weights right on this major middle pivot pin.
I see. So this needs to be greased on a regular basis, right there.
Yeah. It's more for when it's brand new. It's more for when it's coming down. When it's empty, there's a little grease fitting on there they put.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of customers when they install these hoists themselves, they don't lubricate that, and it's hard coming down by itself. And I get the call. I just say grease the center pin. There's a grease nipple on it, and that alleviates the problem. Till it's broken in, right? It's going to be a little tight. Everything's tight.
So how often do you recommend greasing that particular point? Just on the annual service?
Once a year.
Once a year?
Once a year, we need to do your safety inspection, do your maintenance, hit all the grease nipples,
Okay.
lubricate all the cables,
Okay.
Lubricate the cable rollers. Lubricate all the moving parts once a year, especially if it's indoors, clean environment.
So for someone like
Dry
me,
environment.
like this is more of like a enthusiast, like hobby. I would be considered a hobbyist. So you would say once a year, the service should take care of all the moving components for the most part.
Exactly. You see a lot of the hobby hoists I see the cables dry, and I see them pitted with that white
Because they're dry.
Because their cables are dry, and they don't like that. They don't
And it's corrosion at the end of the day. It's one of those things like once it starts, it's kind of hard to stop it.
Exactly. Everybody thinks because in a nice dry, they don't go up and down with the hoist that it should be okay. The cable should be okay. No, the air could rot the cables just as much as the water.
Especially depending where you live. Like where we live, there actually is a lot of moisture in the air.
Moisture in the air. Yeah. So some guys are like, they have the hoist 5 years and they never use it, and they need to replace the cables because it wasn't lubricated.
I see.
If you lubricate the cables, it could go 15 years in your shop.
No problem.
You need to replace it if they're lubricated, maybe longer.
Is that what is the average lifespan you've seen in a shop? Like
shops like a dealership.
Yeah.
5 years. You get 5 years out of cables.
Okay.
You're laughing because you're up and down 5-6 times a day.
Fair enough.
And dealerships tend not to take care of anything.
So would I see cable stretch then at like the 5-year, 8-year mark?
You should see cables like stretch for you 2 to 3 months. Every time you put weight on, you're stretching it. First couple times, stretches a little bit.
So like would I get to a point where the cable gets old enough where like maybe I can't hit the top locks as well when I got some weight on it? Is that like something that I might experience?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
Okay.
Especially the longer cables. Those will be your shortest cables will be in the front.
Right.
The longest cables are in the rear.
Okay.
So the longer the cable, more likely you're going to see the adjustment go out.
Okay.
So it's usually the back ones, depending on where the motor was. If the motor was up there, it'd be the opposite.
Is that why in the manual they suggest that you have 1 inch of clearance between the lock and the actual ladder because of the cable stretch? As like year 5 goes on, you might not, if you don't have that gap, you might not be hitting that top lock anymore.
Exactly, the year. And also the heavier your vehicle, right? Let's say you got a longer hoist. Let's say you have a truck on there, you have something in the back. You load it all the way to the back. You might get on that lock, you might not have enough to lift to get it off.
Right.
And it'll be stuck.
Right. That is something like we mentioned before, like I am scared of. Like that's why I have the tape marks on the post, because if I put a 1 ton on here, I actually don't go to the very top.
Yes.
Because I am afraid of getting it stuck up there.
Exactly. You can put some spacers on the top to get a little more adjustment out of that hoist. Not a problem.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go up another 1/2 inch. I think if I go up another 1/2 inch, you'll be happy there.
Perfect.
Okay, so we have inspected both rolling jacks, went through the exact same process, greased, checked all the pivot points. We've gone through all the pulleys, checked all the cables, and now we are about to service and change out our transmission fluid. So here's the checklist of everything that we will be looking over. It's a good idea that you guys go over this every year. At least if you're a hobbyist, do it every year. But depending if you're a volume shop, like document states, you might want to do it monthly. So you have to justify how often you're getting inspected based on how much you're using your lift. Well, there you guys have it. If you need your hoist service, which I highly recommend you do, you can service it yourself. So at least looking at this video, you know all the points of maintenance on your lift. But if you're someone like me, you want to have a pro come in, contact Babco and they can help you guys out.